Ready? Okay. Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brooke. Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to be repotting and talking about soil and when your plant needs to be repotted, or why it might need to be repotted. It's a gloomy day here. I figured I would just get this all done because, as you can see, I already have quite a few plants that I've been putting off and they just need some care. So let's get into it. I have all these plants here. Some of them have different reasons that they need to be repotted. So when do you really know when you need to repot a plant? A lot of people think that after you bring it home from the nursery or from Lowe's, wherever you've purchased this plant, you need to immediately repot it. You actually don't. You can wait. So I like to wait and repot my plants when they are showing signs. So that means that if the soil has become hydrophobic, or if the soil is not holding water properly or holding too much water, or if I see roots coming out of the bottom and I lift the plant out of the pot and see that it's become root bound, then I will repot the plant. You can repot it as soon as you get it. If you've bought a plant and you have a cute planter to go with it and would like to repot it, go for it. But if you feel like you have bought a plant and now you must repot it, you don't. What a plant actually means when it's root bound is like the roots are wrapping all the way around the pot to where there are more roots than there are soil. You will start noticing the signs, like if your plant is yellowing leaves, or they're dropping off, or just something drastic is happening with the plant that you see, it might be time for a repot. For instance though, it can trick you if you see roots coming out of the bottom. Not like that guy. This guy has one little root. Where is my plant that has all the roots coming out of the bottom? It's this guy. You can see that there are some roots just hanging out of the bottom. And sometimes just mean that the roots came through and they are just kind of trying to find the water. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's time to repot, but let's check it. Let me move some of these plants first. So this plant, this is a philodendron gain. Here we go. So, ooh, yeah, it's got a lot of good roots going on there.
That's a lot of roots that's growing. Are those all the plants that's growing?
These look really good. I don't think I'm going to repot this. It's not too root bound. You can see that it started right here to mimic the circle of the pot and on the bottom a little bit, but this is still really bare in here. And so I'm just gonna leave this guy. If this and this were covered with root, I would repot it immediately. But I'm just gonna let that guy sit, particularly because I don't like to repot plants that are wet. It just makes it a lot more difficult to get the soil off if you're trying to, do that. You don't have to get all the old soil off, but this is not my soil mix, and so I don't love putting soil that has come in the original pot into my soil mix because oftentimes they are completely different. This plant,
that has very good roots.
It does have very good roots, but this plant does not need to be repotted. See how few roots there are? Yeah. This guy is not root bound. He is okay. I would leave it. I would not repot it. Let's talk about the soil because I know that soil can get people in trouble, and that is basically because of the lack of aeration in the soil. There we go. When you get a plant at the big box store, most likely it's going to come in this super compact soil. I almost said moss, but it is maybe a peat moss mix or just an actual soil, regular Miracle-Gro soil that you get in store. That's fine. If your plant is surviving and you're doing okay, that's great. But if you're new to the plant or plant world and you are going into it okay, you don't know what to do or when to water it, it can get tricky, and then you can get fungus gnats. Oftentimes, it doesn't allow air to come in and to dry the soil out and give the roots, the plant, air that it needs. So people think that plants don't need air or that they like soil to be wet all the time, and that's just not true. If you think about your plants outside, they are in the ground, and yes, they are probably in a regular soil mix. We'll say that they are like the Miracle-Gro, the everyday potter's mix that you see in your big box store. However, the ground goes on for miles, and it's also wide for miles. And so when it rains or when you water your plants, it goes down, the roots take up what they need, the rest evaporates or spreads out over the ground. When you have that soil in your pot, it doesn't do the same. So it's just sitting here. And when the water just sits in your soil, that's when it creates fungus, and that's when the fungus gnat issue comes into play. To help alleviate that issue, it is good to put like perlite in it, or orchid bark, or charcoal into your soil, your regular potting soil mix, so that it allows your roots to air out. What I currently have in my bin here is 1 part soil to orchid bark to perlite. I like to use Fertiloom and Espoma soils because often you can find them with fertilizers, like natural fertilizers already in the ingredients. I do like to try to be as natural as possible. I don't know why, it's just kind of like my lifestyle mixed with my plants. And so I do use worm castings, I use fish emulsion for my fertilizer. You can use whatever you feel like you want to use. I hope I explained that okay, because it's a lot. If you're new to this, yeah, there's probably more educated people than me to go, read up on. I have a lot of plants here, not a lot, but a few plants here that need to be repotted for different purposes. So, 1, when you repot, you could just be potting up. So when you pot up a plant, it means they have become root bound, that there's not enough soil to sustain the plant, and so it needs a larger pot. When you do that, unless it's like the plant that I just put up, where its soil is different from the one that I'm using currently for my plants, you could leave that soil on the plant and just put it into a new pot and fill in the soil around it. The roots will eventually come out and they will start growing into the new soil. If you have a pest issue and you are repotting a plant, say you don't want to repot it up, but you want to remove the soil completely from the plant. So for that, I would wait until the plant completely dries out, remove all the soil, the old soil that you can, and then replace it with fresh soil in the same pot. Now, what I'm also doing is combining some plants, because I have 2 pink princesses that were top cuttings, that are now growing, really well. This guy's doing great, and this guy's doing great, and I just want to put them into 1 pot because honestly, I'm kind of sick of watering both of them. I will actually be keeping the same soil that these guys have in their pots because it is what I'm using currently. So it's not bad soil. It's perfectly fine. So I'll just be combining those. I have a repotting partner today because we're repotting his cactus that I just stabbed myself with. This guy has been sitting in the same little pot since we got it. We're going to repot it because this could also be repotting, necessary repotting, is if your soil has just, over time you've watered it so much that there's really none left. That's kind of what this guy is. He's got a big divot there where the soil is no more, and I need to just now replace it. Then I have this Sansevieria, this snake plant. This is a moonshine. I just stuck it in here. It's been like that for months. This is a global green pothos. I bought this guy a year ago, and it's oddly potted. This is how it was potted when I bought it. And this is peat moss, which just holds the water. One last plant that I'm actually dreading, and I think I've talked about it in every video so far, that I don't love string of things. It's kind of freak me out. But I did find a very pretty string of turtles at Lowe's one day. It's grown so well. I have it under my Sansi Grow Light. I don't like when string of things are in a lot of soil like this, because in reality they have pretty shallow and little roots. And so I'm going to repot it into a more shallower bowl. I'm a little freaked out because number 1, there's a spider in here. Yes, it's not a spider mite, it's an actual spider. I saw it. I know spiders are good. I tell myself that. It's good for pest, and however, I just don't want to touch it. Now for this one, I've never repotted a string of things this large. I actually pre-wet it. I I watered it prior because I don't want this whole thing to just fall apart. I'm hoping that with watering it, it will all stay together, and then I can just kind of cut the soil off that I need and just place it in the pot. I have my assistant here, which if you've seen my first video, you know who this is, but if you haven't, what's your name?
Rolling.
Rolling. How old are you?
5.
What's your favorite plant?
Cactuses.
Yes. And did you buy this little mushroom for it?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll save it and we will put it in its new pot, okay? Okay, so can you show us, how do you pet the cactus properly? Can you show them?
Yeah.
Only this kind of cactus. Don't go trying this on your prickly pear. Yeah, you just pet it. We got a little bit of soil in there. Now, we're gonna take this guy. Do that. Oh, so, look at that little guy. Nope, it doesn't have new cacti growing.
Because it hasn't done brand new cactuses yet?
Yep. So I'm just going to remove some of the soil here. I'm not too worried about removing all of it. I'm going to stick that guy in there. Careful not to poke yourself. Like I just did. I know.
So you don't poke yourself.
I know. That's what I've been doing. Just a ton.
If it grows larger like my prickly pear I have.
Ooh, yeah, your prickly pear grows really large. Off a couple more times, but tap the sides to settle the soil. That guy is done. Bye.
Bye everybody. I hope you'll see you next time.
A fun new angle because my recording stopped and I didn't realize it. But I did repot all of the plants that I said I was going to repot at the beginning. This guy, I think, is where it cut off. I did end up repotting it. It's great. It's new. It's spilling everywhere. Great and new pot. Then I repotted, or I actually replanted my one cutting into my other cutting. Then I repotted my global green here. Now, when I opened this up, which I wish it would have showed, when I opened this guy up or took all the soil off, it ended up being just plugs. So, which I kind of should have assumed. When you get a plant, often the growers, like a big box store, the growers will just put plugs into the soil and assume, this is what I'm going to say, assume that they are going to grow roots by the time that they get to you, and it's not always the case. The root system was actually very shallow, like they were not that many roots on some of them at all. So I stuck it into a smaller pot. Yes, I stuck it into a smaller pot. No, I will not kill my plant. I would rather do this than have it sit in this large pot with it was just peat moss, and risk overwatering and like just fungus gnat issues. So, I've done this with another philodendron. I did this with another pothos, my enjoy, and then somebody commented, you basically just killed your plant, which I laughed because no, it's actually thriving and doing really well. But it didn't have a good root system. So it was in a larger pot. It was just mostly soil. And so what that is going to do is just create water, like just being held in that. Then my last one, which missed my story, is my string of hearts. So I couldn't find a cover pot. I like to use cover pots and keep them in their nursery pot usually. But I couldn't find a cover pot to fit this because it is like a weird round shape. I repotted it into a pot I already had, terracotta. It did freak me out. I did have to use gloves. They use gloves to touch it because I just can't handle these guys. If you're a female out there and you're pregnant, I hope I'm not alone. I know I'm not alone because I've Googled this, but when I became pregnant with my second child, I had a strange aversion to plants. I hated them. I didn't like looking at them, and specifically, I did not like snake plants. I hated my string of things. I also didn't like my peperomia piccolo. I think it was it peperomia? It just freaked me out. Thought I was going crazy. Like, I purposely let my piccolo die. I just didn't like looking at it. It freaked me out. I hated the plant, so I told my husband what was happening. Googled it, and sure enough, it's a thing. Women have strange aversions when they're pregnant. There were overwhelming amount of women who said that straws freaked them out. We're saying raw wood was freaking them out, and they had aversions to it, and that was hilarious to me. So I know I'm not alone. Plants was my aversion. I hated them. I did not keep my snake plants, didn't keep my string of things plants. Piccolo die on purpose. It had something, it did something to me. I don't know, like it didn't do anything to me. It's a plant. I felt like I had a personal vendetta towards it, so I had to watch it die. So yeah, that I grew out of that. That's not the case anymore, but I did repot this. Um, the pot you will see here, it's really deep. So when I ended up taking it out of this pot, the root system only went to like right here. It's a very shallow root system, very small, thin little roots. And so I just feel better about it being in this shallower pot. So I cut off a good majority of the soil. That's that. It's a bummer that my video got cut off, but all is well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helps you in your plant repotting journey, because it's my least favorite part of owning plants, I'll be honest. It's just very time consuming and messy. I have a lot to clean up here. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel so you can be up to date on all my new videos. Thanks again, and we will see you next time.